I'm Jennifer Sanasi. You're watching News 24 Live. Well, Gary Kirsten is joining me in studio. She's the wife of former South African cricket player Gary Kirsten. She's going to introduce us to her brand new book, Chai Tea and Ginger Beer. Hello.
Hi, Jane.
Now, chai tea and ginger beer. We need to, I think, get this off our chest. It's not a tell-all in behind-the-scenes story about South African cricket, right?
It is a behind-the-scenes book because obviously as a wife you are behind the scenes, you're behind your husband, but it's not a scoopy book. There's not there's not secrets revealed and drama between the pages, but it is behind the scenes because I think that's what people are interested in. That's what people want to hear. That's what people don't ever get to hear about. So that is definitely the interest level of the book.
Now tell me about the title, Chai Tea and Ginger Beer.
That's the first question everyone asks. The book encompasses many elements. The first being my childhood and so the roots which I came, and that brings the book opens with my mom's homemade ginger beer and how she used to tenderly make this, and that sort of becomes a metaphor for my own upbringing and the family and home side of the book, which I talk a lot about, my own childhood and upbringing, and then also my home with Gary and our sort of roots in Cape Town and South Africa. So that's the ginger beer side of it. And then the chai tea is all the exoticness about it. We spent 3 years in India when Gary was coaching the Indian cricket team. And if you've ever been to India, you'll know that chai tea is what is presented to you
everywhere.
Even
while you're waiting for the subway or the train.
Exactly, yeah. If you're brave enough to get on the train. But so chai tea is just part of Indian culture. It's very much what you get welcomed with. And we felt we were so warmly welcomed into the country. We became part of the country, their homes, the cricket team, loved the people. And so chai tea in the title really symbolizes, I suppose, the exotic in the book. I talk a lot about travel. I talk a lot about touring, whether it was with the Proteas, whether it was in Gary's playing days, or whether it was when he was coaching India. So that's what the chai tea is all about. It's all about the times out of South Africa, the times in different countries, experiencing different cultures. Yeah.
And for those literal people out there, the recipes are in the back of the book.
The recipes are in the back of the book. In fact, we have the launch coming up, and I'm in the middle of brewing copious amounts of my mom's ginger beer, which we're serving in little bottles with labels saying Mom's homemade ginger beer. So
that sounds delicious.
It is in production.
Yeah. Now tell me about the time when you first met Gary.
Gary and I first met when I was still at UCT as a student, and he was in his heyday of playing. It wasn't your sort of what people think it might have been, this amazing romantic meeting. I was waitressing in a restaurant, and he came in, and there were a few sparks there, and I played very hard to get for about a month before I agreed to go on a date. The reputation of international sportsmen sort of precedes them, so I was pretty skeptical. So it took a while for us to kind of get hooked up, but yeah, that was way back in 1996.
Wow. Now, writing the book, looking back at all of those memories, what was that like, kind of reliving and the tours and meeting Gary and seeing how your family has come since the creation of your family?
Well, it was so hard just to choose what should go into the book and what shouldn't.
I imagine.
So it's really a process of looking back at the stories. The stories, people constantly ask you, what is it like to be married to an international sportsman? What was your time in India like? What is it like being married to the coach of the Proteas? So it's those sort of stories that I've tried to capture for people, that really funny stories, sad stories, serious stories, poignant stories, stories that tell about the really tough times. For example, the Hansi tragedy that we had in South African cricket. Times in Gary's career that were of great highs and other times that were real lows. So I tried to pick out the stories quite carefully that certainly had more of a meaning for me, and stories where some sort of learning came out. I think it would be pointless for me to do strings of stories just for the sake of it. But I really tried to extract the life stories that really some sort of learning came out. Maybe as a family we made a certain mistake and didn't kind of get things right, and wanted to share our own learning and journey in that space. So that's what the book is. It's essentially a collection of stories. I believe that stories are how we connect as human beings. And when we are brave enough to share our stories, we can learn from one another. So that's what I tried to do, is really find the stories that I thought other people might read and say, oh, that's me, that's my story. Even though her life is so different to mine, I had the same issues when I became a mother, or the same issues with my husband traveling. So it's those stories that I've tried to really extract.
I want to get to some of those stories in just a little bit, but first I want to know how being married to a professional cricketer and coach affected your family, or what kind of impact did that have on your family?
Jennifer, that's a great question, because I think that's what people don't really get. They don't understand that the life of an international sportsman is one of huge pressure. It's one of extremes, being together all the time, then apart a lot of the time. It's a lifestyle where there's a lot of sacrifice has to be made on the family front. And I think people are experiencing not just when you're married to a cricket player, but most of my friends have husbands in careers where they're traveling. We live in a global world where people are flitting all over the world all the time. So it's a very real issue that of trying to juggle work, juggle family. I look quite deeply into that, and the wrestle that Gary had, and I think that's quite interesting for men in the book, because I think most men struggle with this balance between their work life and their family life, and how do you reconcile the two? How do you balance the two? So I do go into that, and that is probably the most challenging thing, is trying to find a space and get that balance right, because it's a very tricky thing.
It's not all the glitz and glamour that people assume it is.
No, it's not, and I think it's good for people to know that it is a very tough space, and it's one of high pressure. When you have a bad day at the office, no one is writing up about it or posting it on social media or posting it on the newspaper the next day or on billboards. So living in that media space where you're a public figure, that is also pretty tough, because everyone knows about when you mess up, and that's hard.